In this video, we're going to show you how to install your center ridge purlin on your high tunnel hoop house or greenhouse. Whether your structure is small or large, and whether you bought a DIY kit from us or you're fabricating your own structure, you will absolutely want to have a center ridge purlin. We like to install our center ridge purlin differently if it's going to be a single layer covered structure versus a double layer inflated greenhouse plastic structure. But before we get into the details on how to install a center ridge purlin, if you're new to this channel, we're Tunnel Vision Hoops. We manufacture high tunnels, greenhouses, and hoop houses, and we do our best to make videos to show you how to put them together. Now, let's get into the details. All center ridge purlins run from one end of your structure all the way to the opposite end of the structure. And every spot in which they cross a bow in between the ends, they'll connect with a piece of hardware. The first thing you'll need to install a center ridge purlin is the material and hardware to put them together. I'll have links in the description to where you can find all the material. We use 1 3/8 inch steel or 1.315 inch outer diameter galvanized steel tube, brace bands that go on each end hoop, and then we have connection hardware for in between. If you're resting your purlin tube on top of all of your bows, you'll use 2-hole straps for the connection hardware. If you're installing your purlin tube beneath all of the bows, you'll use cross connector purlin straps. You'll also need 3/8 inch drive by 1 inch long self-tapping tech screws. Before you start connecting your center ridge purlin to your structure, I like to lay the purlin tubes out on the ground the full length of the structure where I'll be installing them. This ensures that I start with the right piece of tubing and that I have all the pieces I need to install them. If you bought a DIY kit from us, all of the purlins come pressed, punched, and angled so that they can meet a bolt and nut at a brace band. Since we know these are your end pieces, we're going to want to locate one that also has a swage on the opposite end. It is important that we start with the end piece that has a swage on it. The main reason is so that the very last piece that you put on does not have a swage. This means that for whatever reason, if you need to end up trimming that last piece, you can do so on the ground and then take it up to the top and install it without much hassle. So once I know what end I'm starting on, I'm going to push a brace band onto the bow. Then I'm going to crimp it with a pair of channel locks. Crimping the brace band will make it easier to slide in the pressed and punched end of the purlin. We're installing a single layer covered structure, and for that reason we're going to go ahead and put the purlin on top of the bows. There technically wouldn't be an issue if we decided to install it on the underside of the bow, but for single layer covered structures, having the purlin on top of the bow can help prevent some snow buildup in between them. Just take a look at this center purlin to see how it creates just a little bit of an additional bump that can help shed snow. That, and it does really make for a clean line when you install the plastic. See how there's no dips in between the bows on this one. So once the first purlin piece is in place, we're going to line up the pressed end and the punched hole with the brace band hole, and we're going to put a carriage bolt through the top of it. Very important, put it through the top of it so that the nut is on the interior of the structure. Then pin it in with an impact driver or socket wrench, and here's what your first purlin piece will look like. You got the nut and bolt in place, and it's just resting on the bows, ready for the next pieces of hardware. Here I am pushing the first 2-hole strap in place. I'm pushing it onto the underside of the bow at the centermost point. I then make sure the center purlin is lining up with the holes on the 2-hole strap before proceeding. Now before I screw the 2-hole strap to the purlin, we can check to make sure that our 4-foot spacing is on. You can do this with a tape measure and a friend, or you can make a jig to ensure that your bow spacing is 4 foot on centers or whatever spacing you need to. Now I'm ready to attach the 2-hole strap with screws. So first I'm going to drive 3/8 inch drive by 1 inch long self-tapping tech screws through the 2-hole strap holes and into the underside of the purlin. Then I'm going to drive one last screw through the underside of the 2-hole strap and into the bow itself. This is a close-up of what this will look like. You can see 2 screws driven into the purlin and 1 screw driven into the underside of the bow. Repeat these steps until you're ready to install the next piece of purlin. Slide the next piece of purlin over top of the swaged end on the first piece you installed. Once the next piece of purlin slides over the swage, you'll secure it with 2 self-tapping tech screws, 3/8 inch drive by 1 inch long. Take note of what it looks like. The screws are on the underside of the purlin, so they won't get in the way of the plastic. Once the next piece of purlin has been installed, we can continue on our path to put on 2-hole straps. This process remains the same. Push on the tool strap, double check to make sure 4-foot bow spacing is intact, line the purlin up with the center mark on the top of the bow, drive a screw through the hole in the 2-hole strap and into the purlin on both sides of the bow, and then you're going to drive a last screw through the 2-hole strap and into the bow itself. You'll continue this on every single bow all the way to the end of the structure. And now I'm at the last piece of purlin, and you can see here I'm about to slide it on the swaged end of the purlin run that I've been putting on this entire time, and look, it fits perfectly. But what if it doesn't fit perfectly? Here's an example of a final purlin piece that doesn't line up perfectly. We're going to fix this and make this fit though. And we're not going to push the end bow out because it's already been plumbed with the corner braces. Instead, we're going to make this purlin piece fit by trimming off of this end. To do this, we're going to take note of where the purlin piece passes the end bow. We'll make a mark with a marker. And we won't be cutting off of this flattened end. Instead, we're going to use it to get a measurement. Here it's a 1/2 inch or so. We'll use this measurement on the other end by flipping this piece around, measuring and making a mark at that same distance that we just measured. Once we make a mark, we can line it up and cut it with a reciprocating saw or a hacksaw. If the edges are rough, use a metal file to hit the spurs before you put it up there. So here we are, taking that last piece back up, inserting it onto the swage, and we're going to line up the brace band with the purlin. Drop the bolt in through the hole, throw the nut on beneath it, line it up with that center mark, and then hit it with an impact wrench or socket. Now we're going to drive 2 3/8 inch drive screws to permanently hold it to the swage beneath it. Our purlin now bolts to the end bows at each end with brace bands. It runs on top of the bows, and it connects at each point where it makes contact with the bow. In other words, we're done with the center purlin. If you have any questions on this process, please leave a comment. And if you found this video helpful or you want to watch more season extension videos, consider subscribing to our channel. And if you're interested in any of the materials used while making this video, I'll have links in the description for where you can find them. Thanks for watching.